Hello, Degrassi fans, and welcome to the Degrassi Kid podcast. Today, we are checking in with the hosts of New Year, New Look, New Podcast to see what their goals and hopes and dreams are in the new year of 2025. As we announced recently, we are changing the Degrassi Kid network. We're not saying goodbye forever to New Year, New Look, New Podcast, but our partnership with them is going to look a little different. Instead of receiving their podcast every time they upload on the Degrassi Kid Patreon, you can go support them directly where their podcast is streaming, which you can find in the description. So let's check in with Nathan, Onalee, and Alana to hear about their future plans with New Year, New Look, New Podcast and give them all the love and support that we can. All right, let's check in with them. First, I have to say a big welcome to two-thirds of New Year, New Look, New Podcast so far. We'll be checking in with Alana later. I wanted to do this podcast with you guys today to make sure that we were sending you so much love and support because you guys have been on my network forever, and now we're letting you be free. I think you've gained such a big following. I mean, you guys have been doing your thing, and I think you just don't need me anymore. So I'm demoting myself. But today is all about celebrating you and all of your plans for the future. I was wondering if you guys wouldn't mind just giving us a brief introduction about who you are as individuals, Onalee and Nathan. Whoever would like to go first.
So my name is Nathan Shepard, and I am 1/3 of New Year, New Look, New Podcast. I am one of the hosts, and I also edit the podcast. I'm the one who is just now seeing a lot of Degrassi. That's kind of the vibe for our show. I still need to watch all the old school stuff, which we will do this year. Mark my words, I am going to watch old school Degrassi this year. And
So
that's sort of what I bring to the table for this podcast.
I'm Onalee, and I'm also one of the hosts. Basically, I'm like the middleman. Like when we started the podcast, Nathan had just watched a couple of episodes. I'd already watched, I think almost all the way up to next class at that point. What you'll hear from like Alana was we were like three different Degrassi viewers. Like Alana, who's been watching for like years, me, where I'd been watching for like several months, and then Nathan was like kind of watching as we recorded. And so yeah.
I think that's fun. It definitely makes an interesting dynamic for the podcast, having so many different levels. And it makes it fun to listen to because it feels like you're just hanging out with your three best friends who've all seen the show and you get your own perspective on it too, which is cool. Alana, welcome to the Degrassi Kid podcast. I'm excited to have you here. Can you give
for
us
having me?
Oh, so happy. Can you give us an introduction to who you are? Who are we talking to?
Yes. Hi, everyone. My name is Alana. I'm currently a senior in college, and I've been watching Degrassi since my freshman year of high school. So it's been a long time, long journey. And I'm currently enrolled in college, and I'm getting ready to graduate this May. I go to school in New York, so planning on staying in the New York area for sure.
That is awesome. And you mentioned Degrassi. How did you get into Degrassi? What made you love the show so much?
So I think I'm pretty sure I found Degrassi on a YouTube clip because back in high school, when I was watching the show originally, they had it all on YouTube. So I think I found one episode and I was like, oh, this is the Degrassi my parents never let me watch when I was a tween. Like, I wanted to watch it on Teen Nick, and they blocked Teen Nick from the TV because they saw me trying to watch it, and they're like, you can't watch that, Alana. And after watching it, I understand why they didn't want me to watch it.
That is incredible. And then now I need you to tell us, are you watching it with him now?
I am.
So what has that been like?
It's been so wild because, it's not that I didn't think they were going to like it because it's a show for the entire family.
Yeah.
But my parents are so invested in specific characters. My dad is the biggest Toby stan ever. So when we have him on the pod eventually, Nathan and my dad are going to have a wild time. That's for sure.
Is incredible.
We literally just started season 10, and I was so sad that I had to come back to New York. I'm from Massachusetts originally, and I was like, I don't want to go back because I want them to watch the rest of it with me.
Yeah. How did you each first get into Degrassi for the very, very, very first time?
So Alana asked me for like years. So I met Alana through COVID, through TikTok. That's how we met each other. And it was probably a good like at least 2 years of her trying to get our friend group to watch Degrassi, and none of us like wanted to. And I'd seen I'd seen like stuff from like later seasons when I would like see it on Teen Nick as I was like scrolling through channels, that kind of thing. but never watched it. And so literally one afternoon I was really bored, and so I texted Alana and I said, I think I'm gonna start it. And she's like, you're joking. And I was like, no. And so she's like, at least watch the first like 2 or 3 episodes before you decide if you want to keep watching it or not. And so I watched it and I was like, okay, I'll give it a shot. And then next thing I know, I was like plowing through the show. Like I think I started in like I want to say it was like April or May, and I already was through season like 6 or 7 by like July.
Oh my God.
'Cause I was watching like a bunch per day. And so then as I got further in, we were like, Nathan, you need to watch it. Nathan, watch it.
Yep.
And it's funny, and I don't know if he'll bring this up, but he actually was the one that brought up the idea for a podcast. And I literally was like, that's not gonna happen. I'm
I
like, we're
remember
all
this.
gonna give up on it before it even like gains anything. Granted, have we gone through seasons where we've not recorded? Yeah. But we've done a lot more than I expected us to when
Yes.
the idea was first brought to mind. But that's how I got started with Degrassi.
Amazing. I would die if one of my friends texted me and said, I'm finally going to watch Degrassi right now. I lose my mind. So I understand where Alana's coming from. Nathan, I would love to hear from you, your beginning. We've heard a little bit, but your beginning, and then how you decided to then say, hey, let's make a podcast. Tell me that story.
Just like Onalee, I grew up in the Nickelodeon Teen Nick era of the mid 2000s, early 2010s. And just like her, I would always see like promos and commercials for Degrassi on Teen Nick, but like I was a Drake and Josh, Ned's Declassified, iCarly kid, so like I didn't really watch that stuff. Plus, I was like entering middle school, and I'm like, I don't know if that's really appropriate for me to watch.
Mm.
And it wasn't until I want to say summer 2022, I think was when it was. I remember because the new season of Stranger Things had come out, and I hadn't seen Stranger Things yet, so I like binged all of that, watched the new season, and then I was talking about it with Onalee and Alana, and then they were like, "Hey, Nathan, watch the show Degrassi," and I'm like, "Okay." And then excuse me, I was told it was on Max, and I had Max, and the only thing I knew about it were those promos I had seen and that Drake was on it. Those are the only two things I knew about the show. And then I was like, okay, let me check it out. And then I started watching it, and yeah, I was like, this is. I watched Next Generation first, and I was like, this is really good. And I was looking through podcast stuff because I wanted to like listen to more, like find out more about the show. And then I found I actually got spoiled by one podcast. One podcast was called the JT York Memorial Podcast. So I knew
Oh.
he was gonna kick the bucket soon. um, but then I was like, hey, let's start a podcast. And again, it was kind of just like they were like, all right, fine, yeah, we're probably not going to do much. And by like the end of the day, I already had an Instagram set up, a TikTok set up,
Oh my
the marketing.
God.
And then
So
it was Nathan's idea actually. He jokingly was like, "Hey guys, what if we did a podcast?" We were like, "You know what? That would actually be kind of fun." And he's like, "Okay, I'm gonna start making a logo right now." We were like, "Nathan, what?"
If someone were, let's say they come from this episode and they want to go check you out, what do you think they're going to take away from your podcast? What do you think they're going to like about it?
I think they're gonna like three very big personalities
Mm-hmm.
coming together to talk about a show because there are times where we do not agree on things and there's a catchphrase that I say on the podcast many times
Mm-hmm.
and it's always me going in my mind and sometimes Nathan and Adelie are like, Alana, okay, sure, that you could say your piece
Think
but we'll
whatever you
move on.
want. That's
And
so
I
funny.
just think it's fun and we've also known each other for years, so we have some really great connection and chemistry that like I think all of our episodes flow super well.
We are like tangent masters. We like will literally like wrap around like all these things and like pull in from like we're all theater kids and stuff, so like we'll pull some of that stuff into it too sometimes. I feel like at least compared to what I've listened to, because I've only listened to yours and then like a couple others, I just feel like we kind of just have a different vibe.
Yep.
It's kind of unique to us. And so That's what I think.
I would agree that it's very vibey, if that makes sense. Very just like you're just hanging with friends talking about your favorite show. And but the thing about us is that sometimes we get a little bit silly when we record. And it's often like because sometimes we record late. So there's been several recording sessions where, oh God, remember that one time we just couldn't stop laughing and we couldn't figure out what the hell it was? We were just,
Yeah, we've had
yeah.
many moments where it's just like we don't even know like how we got to a certain topic, and then we have to somehow figure out how to like get out of that topic and back to what we were talking about, because we literally, another thing that I think is unique to our podcast is we will roast each other till the cows come home. Like
Yeah.
there's no professionalism here.
Nope.
Sorry. That's like you're getting raw. This is just our friendship as
Yeah.
people. We don't put on a face for no one.
I love that. That's what I loved about. I have so many memories. I would to paint a scene. I sort the mail at work and I would listen to your guys' podcast and I would be audibly laughing out loud because it literally just feels like you're hanging out with your best friend. I think that's totally the vibe that you guys bring to the podcast. What is one episode that you have that you guys think best represents your podcast?
The Degrassi Tonys.
Oh yeah, yeah. That's what I was gonna say. The Degrassi Tony Awards.
We basically judged all Degrassi theater productions from the perspective of actual theater kids. And so we talked about a lot of like, would this actually happen in a high school? Like, what would a production like this actually kind of be like? Which was kind of fun to think about because there were so many times we would watch things and I'm like, ain't no way a high
Yeah.
school. Some high schools have this budget. Also, why does this high school range from having budget to not having budget?
Yes.
Like, and so, that one I feel like was a really fun one because it was an opportunity that we were all really able to use something that we enjoy a lot
Mhm.
and connect it to Degrassi.
I would agree that the Tony Awards is personally that is like the best one to like get to know our vibe. But I think a good secondary one, like a companion piece, would be the our Degrassi Black Hole episode because we talk about like where did these characters go? Why, like, where did Kendra go? Like, what happened to like all these different plot lines and plot threads that just disappeared? And so I thought because when I first understood the Degrassi black hole, I thought, oh, this is like the Twilight Zone. So in the episode, I did a Twilight Zone homage. I opened with the whole Rod Serling, imagine if you will, a world with, and I just did that and had the music. I think we didn't get copyright stricken for that, but I mean,
Nice.
we're still good. CBS don't sue us. So like, but yeah, I think those two in particular are like the best.
Oh, definitely our Degrassi Tony Awards episode. Very big theater kids. I go to school for theater. Onalee and Nathan both have done and are currently doing theater, and we just love it so much. So we're big theater nerds. So when I was like, guys, we should do a Tony Awards, but with the shows that Degrassi has put on, they loved it. And I think it's one of our most received episodes, but I think it's also just the one that really shows both of our passions really shine through. And it was so much fun to do.
I'm curious. I know what Annalie and Nathan said to this question, so I'll be curious to hear what your answer is. What are your podcast plans or goals for 2025 with New Year Liquid Podcast?
Oh, I think we really want a guest. We're nearing 50 episodes, and I think it would be super cool to get a guest for our 50th. I'm also just intrigued on where we're going to go from here, if maybe we'll start doing some deep dives on maybe specific relationships or maybe specific characters now that we've almost discussed the entire season. Obviously, Ethan does still have to go back and watch all of Old Degrassi. He has to go back and watch all of Old Degrassi.
Yeah.
But I think it would be fun to do another crossover with Evie and see if maybe we can touch on, like, if Evie ends up finishing like a specific season, we could touch on one specific season together. I think all of our podcasts are so intertwined at this point. Like
Yes.
we know how we know how the vibe goes, and it's always such a fun time getting to collaborate with either you or Evie. So I think bringing Evie in for
It's
Degrassi Junior
perfect.
High episode would be perfect.
The next thing I want to hear from you guys is, do you guys have any podcast plans or goals that you want to achieve for 2025?
Alana's been watching Degrassi with her parents for the first time. So her parents are watching it for the first time. And her dad has done podcasting with a friend of his. And so for a while, so like two separate things. For a while, we had this whole like competition going on with her dad where he's like, whichever one of us can get a Degrassi star on the podcast on our podcasts first kind of thing. But also, I feel like they finally got to season 10, so I feel like they're at a good point that we can have her dad on the podcast just to kind of get his perspective as someone who is like older watching it for the first time, because we've gotten to see a lot of his reactions because she'll like film some of his reactions for us to certain plot lines. And so I'm really excited to talk to Doug.
However, they also included that one of their goals is to have your dad come on the podcast. Is that one of your
Oh
goals
yeah,
too?
he would love to come on, especially because we were talking about how seasons 1 through 9 are almost very different than 10 through 14. And since we just finished season 9, I think it would work out for us to be able to kind of dissect that and discuss like the generational parts and aspects of it as well. And, you know, watching me watch the show, but also watching the show as a full parent, like that whole situation, I think would be super cool.
I also think we're still hoping to get someone from
I believe in
Degrassi
you.
on it. We're trying, but I think hopefully.
I feel like this is a good year to reach out and ask, because they're doing so many conventions now that I feel like they'll want to promote the stuff that they're like trying to get fans to go to. So I feel like this is the year to do it.
That's kind of my goals as well, but like my personal goal for this year is I want to watch, like I said earlier, old school Degrassi, because like I joined into this only knowing about Next Generation and then on, and then it was either one of your episodes, Jocelyn, or like just on the internet. I was like, oh yeah, you know, we saw Joey as a baby, we saw Snake as a baby, and I'm like, oh, I need to see that. And I've seen some clips, like I've seen Everybody Wants Something, because like, damn it, I love that song. It's so stupid, but I love it. And yeah, that's mainly my goal, is to watch.
I was gonna say I've watched all of junior high, but I've not watched high, so I'll be watching that as well this year.
That's fun. That's a fun added element. I'm excited to hear your guys' opinions on the original, but I'm mostly excited to hear how it affects your opinion of TNG. Like specifically, all of the storylines that Joey goes through, how he now has to be a parent to Craig, who goes through similar storylines. I'll be interested to hear your guys' opinion on that, which I think will be cool. If there was a character on Degrassi who was a fan of your podcast, who do you think it would be? Who do you think is most likely to tune in?
I feel like Imogen would listen to our podcast.
Yes, tell me why. That's so cute.
Because like the theater aspect, but also the like quirky aspect, I feel like she would be like the kind of person to make like t-shirts and things, and like she'd make, you know, like I don't know. I feel like
she would run the red bubble.
Yeah, like she's kind of like, because I would say Eli too, but I don't. But I think Eli would just be there for like the theatrical like analysis part, whereas Imogen would be there for both.
So
like
serious.
And the vibes.
I love that. Nathan, do you agree?
I would agree, but I would agree with Imogen being a huge fan of our podcast. But for my sake, Mo Mashcore would be a day one listener, because hear me out, we make the playlist episodes now. He would like tune into those every time we make one, because you know, he's big into music, he's done all this stuff with music and the bands and all that, so I think he would have really strong opinions about the podcasts that we do for the playlist for the characters, and he might have opinions if we might do his playlist one day. We'll see.
That is so sick. I think he would be such a big fan that he would surprise you guys by doing like a guitar riff for your intro and making you a little intro. That's what I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm so intrigued on who Nathan and Onalee said. I don't know why. I feel like Sav or Adam. Because
Okay.
I mean, if you think about when they end up doing the whole podcast thing, when Adam does the podcast, and I feel like Sav also just like, it kind of just makes sense that
It
maybe they would also
does.
check it out.
One of the last questions I have for you is how can people find your podcast and support you?
We we are
You.
on Instagram at NYNLN Pod. We also have links to where you can follow our personal accounts. We are on TikTok under the same handle for the time being, depending on the ban. With Instagram, we are also on Threads. It's the same thing too. We don't post a lot on Threads, but I mean it's there. And as far as the podcast itself goes, we're on all the major streaming platforms: Spotify, Apple, I think Google, I don't know, but mainly those two. And that's basically it.
We have episodes. Are all of our episodes on YouTube or just the video ones?
Oh, yeah, right. We are also on YouTube, but it's only select video episodes.
Like
So,
Oh,
like
ones that
our
we-
playlist episodes, our Shark in the Water discussion, our I'm Upset discussion. Check those out.
I like that. And what's one way someone can support you that'll make an impact? Is it listening to the podcast, sharing it, leaving a review? What's one standout thing that really helps you guys?
Probably sharing it, and I would say probably the reviews too.
Mm.
Yeah.
I don't look as much into the analytics as like Nathan does. And so I don't fully know, but all of the above probably.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah. Reviews, listening to the podcast, even like just supporting us on the socials. Like whenever we drop a story or when we make a post saying, "Hey, we got an episode with blah blah blah," and then yeah, so like all that jazz.
And we are just, if you look up New Year, New Look, New Podcast on Spotify and all other streaming platforms, it will be on there. And if you want to listen to us and go give us your ratings, 5 stars would be cool.
Yeah. It's a new year. You need a new podcast. There it is.
Yes.
Go find it. Go look for it.
Your new podcast. Yeah.
And finally, how has being on the Degrassi Kid Network helped you in your podcast?
It's really helped us grow a bigger community, especially the whole Degrassi Kid community in itself. We're all in the Discord and we've all been able to make connections with everyone in there. And every single time a new episode comes out, I'm always surprised, not because I don't think people are going to listen, but we started out from having like 3 listeners, and it's exciting to see our streams grow and our audience slowly grow into this small community that gets so excited. Even when things would drop early on the Patreon, I would look at the comments and I'm like, people have comments. So I think it's just helped to grow our overall audience and just make more connections with other Degrassi fans, which is honestly all I've ever wanted, because when I started watching this show freshman year, I had no one that also watched the show. So big brownie points. Freshman year Alana would be thriving and she would love every second of this for sure.
I really love that. Well, we're about to wrap up, but I want to tell you guys a huge thank you for being on the Degrassi Kid Network with me. And I'll tell you a little bit about my plans for it too. First, I want to say that my dream, whenever I started this, was to help content creators in the Degrassi fan community, help your podcast, Bruce Mackey's Library, Degrassi Schools In. And it was just kind of like an experiment. I had no idea how it was going to go. And I think it's a very successful experiment. I think we've been doing so well at creating content together. You guys have flourished with your really cool ideas. To the point that now I was thinking about the network, and I think you guys, all 3 of you, just don't need me anymore. You I think have done so well this year. But I wanted to say thank you particularly for trying this out with me. And my goal for this year is to not necessarily create long-term partnerships with people, but just like shout them out for like a month or so, give them a little bit of a platform to get their gears running and their gears going. We'll still always support you, by the way. Like, we'll always share your podcast. We'll always love you. But I wanted to say thank you. And then I wanted to ask on your end if the Degrassi Kid Network had any positive impacts on your podcast and how you guys performed this year.
Yeah, I think it has done really well for our podcast because it got us to work with you and Evie and so many others. And it's gotten the outreach too because whenever we post an episode, I think most of our audience comes from the Patreon, or not the Patreon, but the Discord as well, or both actually.
Yep.
And hi Finn. And we it just like it's shown in the numbers, and it's not always about the numbers. It's just about making content, making episodes, having a good time. But it's definitely been beneficial to us, and thank you so much for that.
Oh, you're so welcome. Has it impacted you, Onalee?
I would say the biggest impact was the Jay Hogart fan club group chat.
No, yeah, that is staying. That is staying.
Always.
Numbers, listens, those are all fine and dandy. But I think just being able to create friendship with people where we can send like memes and life going ons and stuff has been really cool too with people outside of the three of us. So
yeah,
that makes me so happy. Okay. Thank you so much, Onalee and Nathan from New Year Podcast for joining us in this very special episode. I wish you the best in all of 2025. Goodbye.
Bye.
Really
awesome. Alana, thank you so much for being on the podcast. It's so great to see you.
Thank you for having me.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay, I want to say a huge thank you to members of the Degrassi Kid Patreon who have helped me support these podcasts in the Degrassi Kid Network. And don't worry, your Patreon subscriptions will continue to go supporting more people in our community. But first, I want to say a huge welcome to our brand new Patreon subscribers. Those are Layla Bell, Courtney, Mundo Man 333, D Scott, Sarah, The Wacky Deli, I Hate Your Friends from TikTok, so good to see you, Jupiter, Tawny, Emily Simmons, Connor, Sarah, and Justine Sutter. Thank you so much for joining the Degrassi Kid Patreon. It means so much to me. And thanks to your support, we're able to help podcasts like the Bruce Mackey's Library podcast, New Year, New Look, New Podcast, and Degrassi Schools. And this is my cat who also wants to come say thank you. We're also sending our shout out to our repeat members, our consistent subscribers, Glenn, Jolene, Amber, Angelica, Degrassi, CSI, Kylea, Nicholas, Sarah J, Shannon, Alyssa, Angie, Becca, Blueberry, Brittany, Katrina, Courtney, Dave, Evie, Gina, Jess, Joe, Joey, Catherine, Casey, Kennedy, Kristen, Laura, Lily, Lizzie, Megan, Mina, Nikki, Rachel, Racine, Sam, Stephanie, Taylor, Brittany, Jess, Lindsay, Randy, Alana, Chantel, Chrissy, Christopher, Emily, Honey, Jamie, Lizzie Games, Mackenzie Russell, Mike, Mix Lucy, Sarah, Shane, Sanita, and Tierney. Thank you so much for being a subscriber on the Degrassi Kid Patreon. I love you, and I'll see you next time.